Good
Welcome to
morning.
Welcome to Talking in Station. Welcome to Talking in Stations, a podcast about EVE Online. I am Matt Earl, your host, and today we are going to explore the current news that's going on out there. A lot of stuff happened this week. We're going to talk about Scourge and meet their CEO and lead FC. And then we're going to round out the show by talking about B-R5RB 5 years later. That happened today, on this day, 5 years ago. One of the biggest, most notable battles in EVE Online's history. So welcome. Let's meet our crew today. Carneros, how you doing?
Good morning. Great to be here. It's a nice day.
And Elise Randolph's here with us.
Yeah, it's very nice to be here, especially on the BTEC-R anniversary day as well.
Perfect guy to have on for that. And Orion Solo, I think, from PL now, right?
I am. Thank you for having me.
All right. He's not a guest from PL. He's not speaking on PL's behalf. Only Headliner does that, but he's part of our crew and research group. And Ron from Test. How are you doing, buddy?
Oh, living the dream, the high-sec dream.
Right. And our guest today is Seth Shadu. How are you doing, Seth?
I'm fine. All good.
Good. It's nice to meet you. We're going to have some time to talk to you and go Scourge and your history a little bit later. But feel free to talk about the news as we bring anything up. Just go ahead and talk with us when we go through the news. Okay. All right, let's start out with the probably the biggest thing that's happened in recent memory, and by recent memory I mean like 2 days, is a huge fight happened in Perimeter. Ron, were you a part of that fight?
Yeah, it was. 4 hours. It was insane.
So tell us what happened and what it was about.
Well, so I've heard, conflicting stories about how it started, but so someone else should probably fill that part in. But I know that ProGod was on the Meta Show, and while he's talking, he's pinging us and saying it's time for a big fight. And so we all get together, we go to Perimeter, and there was a fleet that was causing tie-dye as it was going to Perimeter. It was so funny. And we get to Perimeter, and it's probably, I think it's like 280, 300 on our side, 450, 500 on their side. And we started in Dominic's, and it wasn't going well for us. We switched over to Ferox's, and for the next 3 hours, we were in Ferox versus Ferox. And I was telling them that it was like a knife fight in a bathtub. We were at 5 kilometers, just as fast as you can kill on both sides, and it went. We switched out. ProGod was for the first 2 hours, and Villy was for the last 2 hours. It was pretty crazy. We bought out all the Feroxes in Jita.
Like twice over, right? Because I heard both sides were buying the Feroxes, and they just completely wiped out Jita. There was just I don't know if there were any on sale.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that it even started like this kind of meta game where, at one point we would have a gate camp at Jita watching for people reshipping, and then at another point they would have it. And then there were all these random corporations, I think, doing kill rights. It was just, things that you'd never heard about, and it was really funny. And then it just went on and on and on. And then after, the 4 hours, 4.5 hours, it was just like we were just mentally exhausted. It was the longest, I think, subcap fight that I've personally been in probably like 5 years. I mean, it has to be.
Well, I looked into that. Was this the biggest fight in high-sec history? Now, one of the things about fighting in high-sec is it can really only be a subcap battle. So that makes it a bit different. You can't escalate past a certain point. But I'm not sure it was the biggest one as far as value, because the ships being used were so cheap. But it might have been the most people involved, the longest fight, and maybe the most ships destroyed. There was a bigger fight when perimeter system where Horde was attacked, and it was about 2 years ago or 2017 when Goonswarm was had kind of been defeated in the north for Hakonnen when they had their Hakonnen campaign. So on their way home, they attacked Horde and blew some things up. And that was a pretty big fight. I think we have the kill mail around here somewhere. I'll dig it up. But that's not this fight. This fight was, I think, had more people and took a lot longer. It was 4.5 hours, I think, from most estimates. So that's a big deal. Carneros or anybody else, were you guys around for that one?
I assume it was the kind of situation where they didn't know in advance it was going to happen and couldn't put in for system reinforcement, for node reinforcement. Is that correct? For those of you who don't know the system, you can, if you know the day in advance that you're going to have a fight somewhere, a big fight, there's an automated form you can fill out to tell CCP so that they swap to a special server blade to reinforce your node's capacity. And they do that without telling anybody else about your upcoming confidential battle plans. It's great. Sorry, Ron.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. And that was kind of where I was going. Where I'm not sure. I've heard like 3 different stories, but that was the North came for something that we didn't form for, so they shot the keep to get us to fight. So that's what I heard, but I'm not sure, and I'd love to get the real story on that.
Right. I think this happened yesterday in the middle of the day. I think ProGod was talking on INN's The Meta Show and got pulled off halfway through. So I guess it was a surprise for you guys. And NCPL and Horde especially were in there fighting. Most of it was Feroxes, and there was other groups of things in there too. And the timer would stop and go again as I was watching part of it. We were thinking of going live with it, but it was just a shield timer, and this can happen anytime, right? But this it was a successful operation for the North that was reinforcing the Keepstar and perimeter, which means we're going to see something on the armor timer too, and that will be Monday, 17:20. Basically, UTC. So for Pacific time, that's about what 9:30 a.m. Eastern, about 12:30.
And occasionally, when you go to create timers like this, one of the strategies is to just disrupt your enemy's plans, right? So if Test had any plans this weekend or for where they wanted to do stuff, they're gonna have to stop and prepare everything for this Keepstar fight. Well, not everything, but they're going to have to seriously consider what they're going to do for this Keepstar, because they need to keep that thing from going into armor, because then they start losing a bunch of money per day.
And that's the big deal, right? So the next thing that can happen, and this is going to be tomorrow, Monday again, is the armor timer. And what can happen there is the North can show up or not show up. It's really, they've done all they need to do, but they are forcing Test to show up. So they have to assemble, and they'll have to assemble big. And if they don't assemble big enough, then the North will see that as an opportunity to overcome them and attack. So they have to show not just, they have to show in big numbers and maybe with allies.
Yeah, and the nifty thing is that, anyone that's fighting Test can do this whenever they want, right? So obviously they have to be able to put it in the reinforce, which is not a small task, but they can distract Tests and create this little timer just whenever they please, because Tests are now bound to this Keepstar and perimeter. They might not say they're bound to it, but they like the money coming in from it. So, and it is a significant amount of income. So they're going to want to stop what they're doing to protect that.
And just to add, to what Elise is saying, the other thing is, from the line members' perspective, if if you make them form and no fight happens, they blame you. right? Like if the enemy doesn't show up, well, you just wasted their time. They have other things they want to do.
That's fair. That's fair criticism. Just kidding. No, remind the listeners what it is that this Keepstar does, and what gets interrupted if they successfully create an armor timer now at the next one.
Yeah, so the Tranquility Trading Tower, this was about 3 months ago when it was ran by Choose You, ICY we call him, and then it was contracted for protection from Horde. But basically, right now, this is all of our high sec market. So for the most part, it's skill injectors, some high ticket items because we offer a reduced rate. But on the same token, the things that are safe to travel with, like Plex, that you can put in the Plex vault and easily move between stations, those are in small Asbels that we're kind of playing whack-a-mole with every day or so. And that kind of fluctuates back and forth, and it's a constant fight. But the Keepstar represents all of Test's high sec market, and in the grand scheme of things, if you wanted to think about this as a rental property for Test, it is the most profitable rental property we have.
Yeah, and so the way it works is if you trade in an NPC station, there's a flat tax that's like 10% or something of everything you sell. If you have your own Citadel, you can change the tax to whatever you want. So the Test Citadel drops it really, really low to encourage people to come in. But instead of the NPCs getting the tax, Test itself gets the tax. So instead of it becoming an ISK sink, they just get to profit off of it, which is good. I mean, it represents a pretty fair amount of money.
And that's not interrupted at the shield timer, but is interrupted at the armor timer. Am I correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. So they need to prevent the next one is what they need to do. And so people are going to form up. It should be exciting.
I think so, yeah.
Well,
At least one side will form up, that's for sure.
That's true.
Now, okay, so that could be some of the tactics employed in Monday's fight or non-fight, but there's a lot of preparation for that because this is not nullsec, this is high sec. So we saw some war decks go up on the board. One of them was Bastion.
Did that happen?
Yes, war decking Pandemic Legion. And it's kind of funny because in TIS Discord, you could see Headliner tap you on the shoulder and saying, "What's this about?" So Carneros, as head of Bastion, like what's going on with that? Is that related?
Well, 2 glasses of champagne, and I accidentally clicked on something. I don't know.
You accidentally hit the red button.
I mean, I've done that before. I've declared war on some people who were making fun of me in the role play forum of EVE Online. So I declared war on some role players. Then I declared war on someone else I was playing a mobile game. And they were like, "Oh, I play EVE Online, the coolest mobile game ever, or the coolest and most hardcore game ever. This doesn't mean anything to me." So I just war decked them, and then they stopped playing. Feels a little bit bad, but
oh my god, yeah.
Actually, maybe someone can estimate income from the Keepstar to let our listeners understand how high stakes in this fight about it. Just to give some maybe count.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Seth. And if it's high enough, maybe you guys get involved too. But the amounts that people, they won't say, right? They won't actually say. They'll say what the other guy was making. In other words, Horde owned this territory before. They had the trading market up in Perimeter, and they were making what they say was 500 billion. That's what 500 billion a month is what ProGod said they were making. Now they say that Vili said that Horde was probably making a trillion per month. And those might be exaggerations, not sure. But Test won't say how much they're making. Ron, do you know how much they're making?
Well, so I will say that the only public kind of figure that's been given is to psych up people for a fight that was happening, Vili took a picture of the wallet and said, "Hey, here's 1 trillion ISK, that we've gotten from this Keepstar." So, but the numbers aren't public.
Well, and they
It's more
probably
than I
aren't.
have.
They probably aren't the same either, because when he published that, it was in the middle of a buying craze for injectors. So I think it's probably within, I would say 500 million to 1 trillion, somewhere in between there, Seth, is probably what they make every month on taxes.
Oh, it's worth fighting for.
Yeah, definitely. And they fight for this every day, right? Doesn't Test have a police force that goes around and wipes out competition every day?
We do. It's actually really funny. It's the Perimeter Police Department, and it's the HiSec SIG, and it's also a corporation. But the real thing is, because we can't have a lot of directors in test that can just willy-nilly, declare war on all these corps. In this small corp, we can have a lot of directors because as we were talking, to some people in the Talking in Stations public channel yesterday, someone was joking and said, "Hey, I dropped an ASBEL and it took you guys 33 minutes to find it and to declare war on us." So that's really kind of, that our little high sec kind of SIG, and it's for fun, and a lot of people enjoy that sort of level of play, but it's for finding those ASBELs and declaring war on them when someone from test isn't around that has those roles.
So,
Yeah,
okay.
it's not a lot of people do get to try out that part of the game. So when we saw yesterday that a timer was going to be coming and we wanted to participate, and we decided, well, the Bastion's going to war deck too, so we can get in on the fight. My number 2 said, oh, can I do it? I said, sure. So he got to go and click the buttons
That's
and
great.
see what it was like. Yeah.
Well, so again, what happens is you have this big market in this system and competition is constantly popping up. And are they using high-sec mechanics that have changed recently, the war deck mechanics? Are those effectively to defend against you guys? What's going on there?
Yeah, that's a big thing, and we were talking about it with the CSM this week, and we submitted a ticket on it to CCP. But basically, it's just gaming the war deck mechanics. So I drop a POS, you declare war on me. I then pull the POS, which invalidates the war, but the war hasn't even started yet because there's a 24-hour ramp up time, and then there's a 24-hour invalidation time. And then during those 2 timers, you drop the POS again. But if you drop the POS again, then you can't get war decked again. So it's just dropping the POS and picking it up and dropping it and picking it up and starting these multiple timers that we have to kind of wiggle between. And it's wonky because it's unexpected. You don't know, which timer and which corp, and it's just crazy.
Wild. Well, good luck. We will see tomorrow if there is a big fight. Yesterday's fight was quite long and eventful. So it went from a shield timer. It was successfully reinforced by the North. And tomorrow we'll see the armor timer, the second timer, and then there will be a final timer if the armor timer is successfully achieved by the North.
And just pointing something out, I think a lot of people don't understand how war mechanics work and how Crime Watch works as a system. So if, for instance, Bastion decide that they want to take part with some other groups, they can only rep Bastion members. If they rep anyone else, even if they share the same war, even if they are allies in that war, like using the ally mechanic, they will become suspect to everyone in Eve for 5 minutes. So it's a weird mechanic that even if you share a war, you can't rep someone outside of your own alliance, otherwise you will go suspect. And it's just like really hinky interaction. So if you're there, maybe take a tornado or something, and when someone goes criminal flag, you just kill them. It'll be fun.
it'll be tie-dye if it happens, so you'll have plenty of time to shoot.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, I don't think that some rep can save someone from 100 or more Ferox. They melt everything instead when Fox is ripping target.
Probably not. Yeah, you'll get but
we'll just bring Logi for show. We'll take off all the reppers and just fill them with DPS drones.
There you go. There you go. That's the winning strategy.
All right, so we'll look for more action in perimeter. That's the system right next to JITA, in case you're new to the game. So another thing is, and let's make a quick correction. Is it Bananas? Banana Mars says that yesterday, Villy on the Meta Show said that it's 300 to 400 billion a month. So that's what he said publicly. And by the way, Ron, I know you know the real answer, but you're very good at covering yourself by speaking only about the public answer.
I just work here. Sir.
Good job. All right, let's move on to Skill U is and has been, it turns out, the largest alliance as far as SOV holding in the amount of systems that they have. So they have 223 systems. That puts them at the top of the list on Dotlan, at least. And how did that happen?
I mean, I think it's just a matter of when they pushed out the DRF. They're the only ones that wanted to take stuff there, right? So they just ended up hovering it all up, and then Try collapsed a little bit, so they hovered that up too. So now they just have a bunch of space.
Also, they don't have their rental stuff in a separate alliance, so it means that they've got a large. I assume some of that is rented out.
I think all of it's. I think they try to rent out all of it. I don't think they're serious about holding SOV, especially there, but I think their main interests are to rent out the SOV.
Yeah, Orion, you used to be in Triumvirate. What can you tell us about that? No, I don't think we can hear you, or I can't.
No, we lost Orion. Okay.
All right. Well, so we assume that it is Triumvirate space. Funny enough, Scourge is. You guys have a good relationship with Skill U, right?
Yes, some kind of. We are blue to them, and we have same interest right now. And we had them like for 2 months, maybe, or maybe 3 months. I have some good friend of mine in Skill Youth who introduced me to their leadership, like Capco or Bara. So, and we started working together against Tree.
So it's a recent development that you guys are allied. You don't have a deep history or anything.
Yeah, we are strong allies now.
Oh, okay. Do you know what they intend to do with all that territory? Are they just holding it? Are they renting it?
Just renting it, like we are renting all ourselves. This is just easy money for PvP or more Titans, more super carriers. I have like 50 system for my alliance and only one system for my members rating. So everyone is rented out. Everything is rented out. Sorry.
Is it hard to find renters over there?
No, it's pretty easy. There are a lot of people who want to rent some space out.
Oh, interesting. Orion, is your mic working?
I hope so now.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yay.
Discord does funky things with me. But like I was saying, Tri was like one of the top 10 SOV holding alliances for as small as we were. We owned nearly almost 2 complete regions, including some space in Dederid, Ends Mother, of course, Scalding Pass, some SOV there, and that's all gone now. So when Skill Youth took over all that.
So anyway, Thalcy Mine makes an interesting question here. What regions are we actually talking about when we're talking about renters and where Skill U is and stuff?
So most of their renters are in Paragon Falls. In fact, I think all of their renters are in Paragon Falls, which is in the drone regions. It's kind of near Venal-ish, kind of near Malpay, so it's kind of next to bot space as well. They also own Owasso and Innsmother, which they kind of recently picked up, but I don't think they have that many renters there. I don't think that area is populated like at all.
I think the Peregrine Falls area is quite unpopulated now because Goonswarm ran a campaign against renters in this area, so some of them moved to different place. It was like 1 month campaign. They killed some supers and some Rorquals. Here you can just look killboard history. They did good. They used a lot of wormholes to do it.
And one of the neat things where if you own a lot of space, as SkillU does, if someone decides to camp one of your regions, you don't necessarily lose renter income. You just relocate them to another area of space that you also own. So like, oh, if you're dying here and this area is not suitable for you, I've got these other systems that you can also have like many light years away. And if they have the infrastructure set up, then it's easy for them to move and get relocated. I don't know if they have the infrastructure set up for it, but I assume they do.
Yeah, the infrastructure is cheap and the income from renters is high, so waste like 3 billion to fully upgrade your system and you can take like 5 billion average price for each system, so
not bad.
It's crazy. There's a lot of appetite for people to rent. I had a renter come through, look at a system, and offer me twice what the current renter was paying for the system, it's just crazy.
So what do you do there? Do you say? Do you say to the guy that's living there, "Hey, I know I gave this to you, but I got to take it back because somebody wants to pay more"?
I don't do that. Okay. But I did introduce the two parties to each other and say, how do you guys feel about splitting it or working together in some way? And that conversation, for which I had very little expectation of success, actually went a lot better than I thought it would.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, we were talking about, I think we were talking about Kavala Expanse that got attacked by Goonswarm, or not Goonswarm, but a SIG from Goonswarm. I think it was an Australian SIG too, and SIG is Special Interest Group for those that don't know. It's a pandemic horde. Yeah.
It wasn't Australian SIG, it was Kendar 6 Space Violence led by his minor FC, and he's from China. Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, I thought it was Space Ghost that did that, but I could be wrong. Maybe they were just helping out.
I think it's Alice Homolowsk.
Alice. Alice is really good. Yeah.
He's Chinese.
He was flying with us some time ago, so I know him a bit.
Yeah. Alice,
he was smart enough to survive in a Russian-speaking fleet, and he is Chinese, so it was really hard for him, but he survived, and he was even managed to rep some people and save them, and it was awesome. Wow.
So you have someone speaking Chinese in a Russian fleet, and he's still able to do what he needs to do. That's a good player.
He's a good FC. He speaks perfect English, and he speaks perfect Chinese. That's super valuable in EVE.
Oh, and you would know because you speak Chinese too.
Yeah, but mine's crappy, and his is really, really good. Well, his Chinese is perfect.
So
maybe because it's his native language.
Yeah, he better speak that. So he ransacks Kavala, and Pandemic Horde decides they're going to not just leave it to die. They've sent a group, I believe the Partisans, to go and to at least make it harder for people to wreck it, right? That's what I've heard recently. We'll talk to Horde again soon and see what the progress is there. So they're not giving up Kalevala Expanse, if my information is correct. Okay.
I think there's two things about that. The first is the kind of burn to the ground portion of it, which is, if you're reinforcing iHubs, you reset their ADMs, which resets all, of the upgrades, and just, you have to start fresh. And the second, sort of thing about that is it creates timers. And this is what we were just talking about, which is if you have all of these timers going, you have to make choices with your one or two fleets. So you have to say, hey, do I go here or do I have to protect this timer? And, we've encountered that a couple of times where we're going to an Asbel. Just the other day, there were two Asbels back to back. They beat us on the first one, but on the second one, they had to go to timers. So we won the second one pretty easily. So, there's a lot of the meta game because when we talk about the timers and we talk about structures, all this is happening at the same time. So choices have to be made at the alliance level or the CEO level.
All right, cool. All right. Other things that have happened in the news real quick is Waffles lost a Revenant, which, God, that used to be such huge news. At least when those ships first came out, like how hot were they?
They were super. Everyone who liked to drop their supers on stuff always wanted a Revenant just because of the bonuses it gets. It's incredibly agile. The fighters are super powerful. And you can basically drop it without getting caught pretty easily. I say that as like it's died. So, but I guess only one of them died. That Waffles do drop with two of them. And I know Lord Mop is the one who is kind of the super hunter in CVA. He's kind of like the wrecking crew but in CVA. And he's been trying to catch this pair of Revenants for the last month and a half. Like he's just been ready to drop his little dread bomb. Well, not little, but he's been ready to drop his dread bomb every day, every other day. He's trying to do bait ops to kind of get them out. And he finally caught Waffles as they were sleeping, and they got a Wyvern as well as the Revenant. The Nidhogger got away, so really good prioritization on that one.
When they first came out, there was another reason why they were popular also. There was some kind of, at one point, if I remember correctly, they changed the jump ranges of all the other super caps, but forgot about the Revenant because it was this other faction thing on the side. So it temporarily had slightly more jump range than all the rest. And people were like, oh, this is fantastic.
Oh, nice. I did not know that, but that is also pretty fantastic.
It's good to be rare.
Yeah, when the Vendetta came out, the love for the Revenant dropped a little bit, but I think people still like it. And this is the second Waffle Revenant that Lord Mop has caught. So Waffles are going for the three.
Personally, that Revenant is one of the best super carriers in game, and it is almost invulnerable to any dread bomb. So if the Revenant pilot is good enough, he can survive even in harder situation. Even if 50 dreads will fall on him, he still have a good chance to escape. But I found the strange thing. This Revenant pilot used a strange set for his ship. He should have used the high-grade snake. It's way better.
Oh, I got to figure out how to do this because I would like to survive a dread bomb.
He just turn off his AB and get out far enough from dreads. Just hit his Sino and overheat his afterburner and run.
Yeah, because the ship goes really, really fast in terms of speed.
And he cannot be scrambled, so. And Lebs are working very bad on super carriers, so he just gets away from dreads in maybe 20 seconds or something like this. He will be already 70 kilometers off, and dreads, if they are close range, they really won't hit them good enough on this distance. So he is some kind of safe.
So I didn't know waffles are still kicking around Providence. They're fighting down there.
Yeah, that's they're like the exact size to where they're like too big to do something small and or something massive in low sec without getting stomped on by snuff. But so they're just the right size to roam through Providence and fight them without burning Providence out too hard, because they can't seriously contest all of Providence solve wise, but they can fight and make CVA form, and if CVA kind of slip a little bit, they can get punished. And I think they roam around a lot as well.
There is
Eve
no
is a
need
really
to really contest Providence, because Providence form for every timer and they give fun. We also create some jump bridges timers when we have nothing to kill, and CVA format for all of them, and we had some very nice fights with them. They are good enough for this, but there is no reason to kill them at all. It will be hard mistake to really come and destroy CVA, because it's some kind of a fountain of life, and it was all time, all of history.
Yeah. For ages and ages, people play with Providence, but they don't actually want to kill it. Or CVA, basically. Another couple things in the news are, it looks like Razer has 2,000 members. Is that just on paper, or is Razer back? I like how those two words go together. I wonder what that...
I don't know.
All right, we'll look into that, because I thought that was kind of interesting. That's a lot of dead bodies, and what a horrible way to say that. That's a lot of population for an alliance that is completely inactive. So something might be going on there. Be interesting.
Yeah, it's one of the most storied alliances in the game in terms of history. So it'd be neat to see if they're coming. I don't see it coming, but maybe.
I wanted to join them. I applied to join them at the same time I was transitioning to NC. I was weighing options, and Razer was one of the groups I actually applied to and checked out, but it didn't turn out that way. Another thing is the Keepstar in MTO. What's the strangeness around that? Anyone know? I don't either.
So from what I understood is the group that owned the Keepstar got mad, and they kind of flipped a little bit. So they just took the Keepstar, and so the guys that are living there are just like, you know what, screw you. We're gonna kill our own Keepstar with our own ships in it. So you can't have it.
It was an internal squabble, right? Somebody who owns a Keepstar, it's not just that you don't control it as a corporation or as an alliance, but it's not just that you don't control it. It's that it can be used against you if it's given to somebody else. We saw that happen in the North when corporations that own their own Keepstars and in an alliance were able to give that Keepstar to Goonswarm that was invading GOTG. And so GOTG has these corporations that are basically flipping and giving their operating station to the enemy. And that's very damaging. So you can't trust that. You can't have a neutral Keepstar near you. So if you don't 100% control it, you got to destroy it. And I think that's what happened here. And you'll notice that after the things that happened in the North between GOTG and its corporations that were flipping to Goonswarm, all of NC said all Keepstars are under one corporation, and that is the lead corporation in NC, with no exceptions.
Yeah, we PL had that same thing from the beginning when Citadel started. We're like, yeah, let's just leave them all under one corp. It'll be easy.
Pretty interesting. So, does somebody have the link to Twitch so we can put it inside our channel so Shadow can have it, so Seth can have it? Thank you. Ta-da. Okay. And so let's move on to something I've been eagerly anticipating, and that is talking to Seth about himself and Scourge, who we've heard a lot about. For those of you that don't know Scourge, they are essentially allied with Skill U, pretty much in the, well, we can ask him all these questions, but basically what we know is that they are very, very feared by Test and Legacy and other groups that fight them because they are incredibly capable at fighting, and we'll find out why in just a moment. So Seth, Shadow, by the way, you have two O's in there, so it reminds me of Shadow. Did you pick your name based on that?
No.
Okay. How old is your character, by the way?
Which one? I have lots of them. I was playing this game like for 10 or more years, so there is no reason to ask this question. I left it like 4 years ago or 5 years ago for a long period, but then I have returned to play it again. It's some kind of drug that you can live without, so pretty interesting game.
Yeah, super addictive. Okay, so Seth, Shadow has nothing to do with Shadow of Pandemic Legion, one of the storied FCs that no longer plays. But Seth, you are the lead FC and CEO of Scourge. So first tell me about yourself, when you played and who you played with, who you flew with, and then we'll talk about Scourge.
It's a long history, actually. It will take a lot of time, but I started playing in some random XIX Renter Alliance like 10 years ago. Then I moved to Red Alliance. Then I moved to Dark Side, as I remember, to Goonswarm. And after Goonswarm, I moved to my own alliance. Then I disbanded it and moved to Init. After playing in Init, I was playing in my own alliance, old one. I actually don't even remember how it was called. Then I joined Darkside. It was famous Russian roaming alliance, and I left the game completely for like 4 years. And after this, I returned back to the game and created this Scourge Alliance. That's like a full story and in short.
So why did you create Scourge, and what's the purpose of Scourge?
Oh, it was the only purpose of this alliance is to entertain myself, because I was some kind of, it sounds interesting, but when I came back to the game, I haven't found any Russian-speaking alliance that I wanted to play this, so I have to do something about it, and I began to build a group of players who interested in pure PvP, and that's how Alliance was created, because there was no Russian Alliance that I wanted to join. Maybe only Project Mayhem, but they were only a low-sec group, and I wanted to play in no-sec a lot too.
Seth, I just wanted to ask, kind of based, how do you feel about the Russian community? Because I know that, we have a very strong Russian community, but that's from an outsider, right? So I don't know, but I do know that there are tons of very skilled Russian pilots, and that, you guys tend to form corporations and groups together. But I just kind of wanted, like if we're kind of guessing about the pulse, right? Or if the Russian community was growing or staying the same, or what you thought about it.
I think it is slightly dying, because when I was playing like 7 years before, it were lots of strong PvP alliances in Russian community, like AAA, like Stain Empire, like Solar Fleet, like maybe old XIX, and like Dark Side, and some kind of early Gorgon Empire. It was lots of alliances, but now there are only maybe 2 strong Russian groups. It's Snuff Russians, like Faye and elite pilots led by Tao AD. Of course, he's Russian-speaking player, and he leads a huge group of Russians. They are pretty skilled. They are something that people should learn how to play from them.
What group are they in?
2 Snuff Corps. It's elite pilots, Tau AD's Corps, and Far East ENC, the second Corps led by Oscar.
And they're in Snuff, you said?
Yes, they are in Snuff both. And the second group is actually my group. There are lots of skilled players, but actually it were more skilled players in my group like 1 year ago, because a lot of them are just tired from game and retired. This happens. So now I am trying to work out and train more people to be better. So it's hard, but actually some people are willing to learn. So maybe in next future we will be as good as we were 1 year ago.
So
what's the relationship like between Scourge and Snuff?
There is no relationship between Scourge and Snuff, but I just know Tau, I just know Hai, and I know maybe Tid, and we are talking, and I can't call them friends. Maybe you can, but it depends on their feelings. But I don't dislike them. We are like people who are playing against each other. Sometimes we are playing with each other, and we are all good about this. It was like Tau tried to kill my Alliance Titan in 1 day, and after this we were planning something together already. So no hard feelings, really.
So I'm looking at the influence map, and it looks like your territory is kind of between Fraternity and the drone regions. You're in Immensia, is it?
We are playing some game in Immensia, yes. It's just a fun game to get some content of it.
I see. So you're attacking in Smother, but I misspoke. I meant you're over in like Great Wildlands area and in Smother.
Oh, we have some area for renters, yes, to make some alliances. There are 2 systems for alliance renters who want to crap something, and other systems are rented out.
That's crab with a B, by the way.
Yeah.
So you have renters in the area that we see you on the map. That's really rented out to people, and you keep that kind of safe. And you guys explore and find content or fights basically everywhere else, including right now. Where are you most active when you're roaming around?
We are roaming around the XIX area and Immensia, so Tenerife, Immensia, and of course we protect our renter space like Scalding and Smother. Oh, of course, Curse is always full of content. And actually, I don't like to focus on some area. I always scan some wormholes and ask people to scan them, so we can get into any part of Eve, and this is very good for content and targets. For example, yesterday we killed the Shadow Cartel Caps in Lowsec via a wormhole, baited them on a Dreadnought, and got some shiny kills.
Yeah, and Shadow Cartel are not bad. They have they've been around a long time too. So you took them down. What do you guys like to fly? Do you have specialties that you like? Certain ships?
Yes, we have some alliance formats for actions, but my favorite ship is Macariel, of course. Just like it. Shield Macariel, even I flied it even before it got boosted in the last patch.
Mm-hmm.
I think for some reason, Curse alert, the region of Curse has like always been home to a lot of really strong Russian groups, and that led them to, or maybe I don't know if it's cause or effect, but the Macarial and people living in Curse always seem to go hand in hand. I know, Bright Side of Death is a group that basically live in Curse forever. Faffy Waffy's group, Old Dark Side, used to live in Curse. They just love the Macarial. What is it? What is it that makes it like your favorite ship? Is it just the way it looks, or just because it's fast and does a lot of damage?
It's Alpha. Alpha is always good to counter huge blobology. That's why I like it. You can fight any count of enemy lodges and still kill shit.
Yeah, so Macarials, real quick, Elise, what's the nature of a Macarial? Like, why? Who uses it and why?
Well, I mean, it's not used too much anymore, but it was for the longest time the most versatile battleship because you could do long range, short range, shield tank, armor tank, anything you wanted to do would fit into literally any doctrine that you would want. So you and it's super agile as well. In terms, it's basically handles a little bit better than many battle cruisers, or at least it did until it got nerfed a little bit.
Yeah, a super fast ship. They used to say it flew as fast as cruisers, which is a much smaller ship. When you have the ability to do either shield or armor tanking, or to fit it a certain way, if you can obscure what you're actually flying, that's an advantage, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it used to be a bigger advantage. Now it seems like these days everyone kind of knows what to expect when you undock in a certain ship, just because, at least for the bigger groups, basically everyone's inundated with spies, or they just have some inkling of what's going to happen. But for smaller groups and medium-sized groups, it's absolutely crucial, because you see a group of Max, if you don't see the Lodges with them, you have no idea what they're going to be fitting.
Oh, the Lodges give them away. Interesting. Seth, so you like Macarials. Do you guys fly Nightmares too? I imagine you fly everything. But
Yes, we fly Nightmares too. Actually, we had some bad experience with them in some fights, because I have led Nightmare fleets too few times and didn't have much experience. But yeah, that's also very cool fleet, and I like it too.
Are you guys able to escalate if people drop caps on you? Is that part of your repertoire?
Maybe you can look through our kill board and find some dead supercarriers and titans. Yes, we have a pretty huge dread bomb. Not so huge as Snuff maybe, or other huge alliances, but up to 30 dreadnoughts is formed quite fast from us, like 1 ping, 5 minutes, and 30 dreadnoughts on enemy supercarrier. We got 2 test supercarriers last time. It was flash form. My friend catched them with an interdictor, and I used our Drake roaming fleet to hold them and dreads to kill them fast enough. So.
But you guys use everything, and you guys use wormholes to get around to find people to kill. So do you just kill everybody they run into, or do you have special enemies that you like to go after?
I don't think we have special enemies at all. It was time that I don't like the Psot alliance from Curse, but this time is a long time gone. So we are just killing all neutrals people to us, and some of them are annoying actually, like Scalding Past dudes who are trying to attack our Retinors or Sovereignty, but they are trying to play their game, so I can't blame them a lot. I can be mad on them because they don't let me play something that I want to play, and I have to kill them, but in the end it's kills and content at all. No hard feelings about them. Maybe after some time they will annoy me too much. I will bring my fleets and kill their citadels, but it won't be soon enough.
Seth, what's Scourge's relationship like with fraternity?
We have a non-invasion agreement with them now, and I know their CEO. He is a pretty interesting person. He is funny, young and funny, so we are not shooting them because they let us live near XIX and Immensia people and fight them. So, but some of actually Winter Coalition Tudors tried to attack our people, and also it was one super carrier who decided that he is smart enough to kill our roaming fleet and be not being dropped, so he died. It happens. So we are not hostile to fraternity and other people of Winter Coalition, but if they try to kill us, we have to shoot them back.
Well, we've
also,
heard
some my alliance members are stupid enough to attack them without any reason.
We have some like that too.
I think everybody does. So, who are some of your allies who are some of your allies that are, I don't know if you can talk publicly about it, but who are you allied with? Who are your friends besides fraternity?
Our friends are Skill Yourself, of course. They are our strong blues. And also Unspoken Alliance and Ethereum Reach Coalition. They were flying in the same fleet with us against Prothean and No Valor alliances. No Valor are now Skill U renters, so we stopped an offensive against them, and Prothean are just not fighting us because we have too much ships for them to fight with.
You grew too big.
Yeah, sometimes. So I don't like to fight small groups because they can't give us enough content. They just dock up if we blob them, and I can't tell to people in my fleet like, oh, we have too much people in my fleet. You 10 people go dock and go do your business, and we will go fight them. It's not gonna work like this. Very sad, but no.
So, from our perspective, from Talking in Station's perspective, we have people from all over the map, and we talk to each other and compare notes and talk about who we see coming up and stuff like that. And Scourge keeps coming up over and over and over again as an alliance to watch because they are really good pilots and they are, winning fights that they have no business winning. And that almost like the bigger groups that are much bigger than you fear fighting you guys, or at least their FCs do. That's a good reputation to have.
As I told, it was the reputation from the previous years. Now we have to improve ourselves a bit, and this is my fair opinion about us. But soon I think we can get through it. Just people are getting tired from game and leave, but new people come and learn.
Yeah. How do you recruit? Do Russian groups recruit differently than other groups like European or American groups, or is it all the same?
Actually, I am not running any recruiting campaign. The most people who came to my alliance are just friends of someone who already joined us. It's work like this, and actually I don't like public forums, and I post on them, but my posting is so awful, so I don't want to talk about this. And sometimes it filters people who shouldn't be in our alliance, who like something which is too popular. They are just see something for them and want to join it. It's bad people. They always will run when it will be time for a real fight. And people who come with just being friend of someone, they stay even in a bad situation. And we are always in a bad situation, surrounded by enemies, so we need people like this. Are strong enough to survive these situations.
That is a very interesting point. So it's not reputation or advertising or good posting that gets you the members that you want. The members you want are the ones that'll stick around when times get tough. And those are usually friends of friends that already are enjoying the group. That's what I'm hearing you say, Seth.
Yeah, so you get me right.
Good.
So speaking of friends, Seth, I just wanted to ask, and this is for me, my favorite Russian streamer is Lucy Liu. Do you have a relationship with him, or because I can't understand a thing he says, but the gameplay is absolutely amazing.
He isn't a friend of mine because we live in two different cities and I have never met him IRL. And I really worked with him like 2 times, I think, when they tackled something and they asked us to help them kill these things.
Yeah.
Oh.
Now, so he has called you in a couple times to help him with something that was too big to kill himself.
Yes.
Do you or anyone else in your group stream or anything like that?
I don't let people to stream our comms, so it will be very boring to watch.
I see. I just lost my last question for you, but it was I stepped on my own toe when I was.
Were you in the Battle of B-R, Seth?
No, and this is good for me because maybe if I was in it, I weren't playing this game anymore. So I'm happy that I was doing some RL things during this awful battle. I don't think it was a good gameplay to sit like 24 hours and watch some titans die. Not interesting for me, actually. Yeah, so it was epic, but not for me.
That's very interesting because everybody wants to be part of the big fights, the ones that people talk about for ages, like us, and those people that were in it were like, oh, it wasn't that fun. It wasn't that great. It took a long time. But you're smart enough to know, never get involved in those in the first place. Keep it manageable, keep it fast, and keep it fun.
Yes.
Well, he has the disadvantage of being in the Russian time zone. So that's at the beginning of the day, of the eve day. So if you get involved in something that's going to last until downtime, that's a long stretch. I live in California. Half of that is gone by the time we get involved in the battle. So we only get a half a day of to go until downtime. So we're kind of lucky and yet late. It's hard to explain. The Russians who participated in the battle fought much longer than the Californians did.
Yeah.
Actually, I think the Russian time zone is full of content because it's between the Chinese time zone, and there are a lot of Chinese in the game, and they are the reactive players. They are not like others. They are aggressive, and they bring fleets to kill everyone who enters their space. This is awesome. The Chinese players are just awesome, and then after Chinese time zone comes Russian time zone, so we cross Chinese time zone and we cross EU time zone, and EU time zone is full of lots of players. It's, I think, the hugest time zone of all EVE Online, because most of players, EVE Online players, are EU time zone. So
that's a good point, and it's probably what I wanted to ask you about the Chinese and Russians. Like, what's your view about like the activity that's happening in those hours? Because I ask this because I've noticed that when I'm up late, I can see that the numbers don't go down as low as they used to, which strikes me as something's changed. Either more people are playing in the Pacific time zone, or new types of players have come to play. So as far as like Russians and Chinese, do you feel like there are more players playing in those time zones than there were?
in Chinese time zone, of course, because there are lots of newcomers, Chinese players. But EU time zone is like the same. It many years ago. It's always very full of players, actually.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys noticed that, but check out the low tide in Eve's population, and you'll notice that it doesn't go as low as it used to. So I get on, and I used to see, say, 18,000 players, and this is back in 2008, 2009, which was kind of a low, it's when I started, when it was a smaller population. And then it went up to like 25,000 and stuff, but then it came back down, right? Like after 2014. And when that came back down, we got as low as like 15,000 people playing, at late Pacific time zone. And that just seemed like a really low number. And now it's back up to 23,000. So I was thinking, wow, a lot of people are playing EVE Online. And then I look at how many people play EU time zone, and it's still only 30,000, 35,000 playing. So I think that's flattened out quite a bit. Like the valley and the mountains are not as high and low as they used to be, which is interesting. I'll have to look into that. All right. Any last questions from our viewers for Scourge and Seth? Let me know right now. And while we give them a second to write something, we're going to prepare to talk about B-TAC-R 5 years later in just a minute. Okay, well, we might as well. We can always talk about more stuff later at the end of the show, but I did want to get to this portion of the show because on January 27th, 2014, a colossal fight happened. It was the biggest by far of its age, and we're going to watch a little video here just to give everybody context that wasn't here in 2014. So let's cue that up and roll.
It's a day I will remember for the rest of my life.
The Battle of B-TAC-R 5RB raged for over 20 hours, involved tens of thousands of players, and witnessed the destruction of over 3,000 ships, including 75 Titans, 1/3 of all Titans ever lost in the 10-year history of EVE Online. It was truly the most remarkable confrontation ever to take place inside a computer game. As happens so often in history, the catalyst for an event this large was something quite small. In this case, an unpaid sovereignty bill. The N3 coalition had used a single station in B-TAC-R as the forward staging post in its long-standing war against the CFC-Russ coalition. When the sovereignty dropped, CFC-Russ saw the opportunity to deal a blow to N3. Both sides quickly mobilized their forces, causing skirmishes to erupt all over the region as ships moved in to capture or defend the system. 2 hours after the sovereignty drop, CFC-Russ had assembled their forces and jumped into B-TAC-R with a massive fleet, including their super capitals. N3 immediately assembled its already outnumbered forces into its signature wrecking ball formation. Thousands watched as the two sides faced off, exchanging volley after volley from their doomsday weapons. Countless flashes from beams and bombs were punctuated by the occasional blinding light from an exploding Titan. Truly, there was no turning back. 4 hours into the engagement, the two sides stood roughly even, but N3 realized it couldn't match its opponent's ability to replenish their forces. Deciding that it would have to disrupt coordination between Russ and CFC to secure victory, N3 focused its firepower on the Russ fleet commander. In the process, N3 would suffer the loss of 5 more of its own Titans before finally destroying its opponent's Avatar flagship. N3 would never again match its opponent's strength, but its forces stayed on the battlefield for another 8 hours. Ultimately, though, N3 sounded the retreat. When the fighting ceased, 20 hours after it began, over $300,000 worth of ships had been obliterated, with N3 losing 59 Titans to 16 from CFC Russ. N3 was forced to retreat from B-TAC-R and neighboring regions, but the war has raged on, even as both sides seek to rebuild. However the current conflict ends, pilots who venture into B-TAC-R will see the shattered remains of the once magnificent ships that were lost in this titanic clash.
We're muted.
Now condemned to drift in cold, unforgiving space forever.
All right, welcome back. So that was to give you guys some context on B-TAC-R and how significant it was up to that moment. Now we've seen fights that are much bigger and were, much more at stake when the fights happened. But up until that time in history, 5 years ago this day, B-TAC-R was just a skyscraper in a small town. It was gigantic. So to talk about that, we've got Elise here with us and Carneros. Both were in the fight. Well, I guess we'll open it up to all you guys. But Carneros, we'll start with you. Like, what was it like for you?
Well, I get up early in the morning and I saw that stuff was happening, and I saw pings going on in the Imperium. And then when the first Titan died, I copied and pasted it to CCP Navigator. And I said, bro, wake up, stuff's happening on Facebook. And I get to work in the morning at Sony Online Entertainment. And I tell my boss, John Smedley, that there's a big fight happening. 3 Titans are dead by now. Actually, it was 2 Titans had died by the point I got to work. A 3rd Titan dies, and I say something on exec row where I was sitting. And they turn to me and say, take the rest of the day off. Go home, do what you have to do. Don't lose your Titan this time, meaning because they're giving me shit about losing my Titan in the Fountain War.
Just a few months before, right?
It wasn't that long before. And they said, keep us posted. So I'm spoiled rotten. I got to drive home and spend the rest of the day connected into the game. We played all day. I didn't lose my Avatar. Towards the end, I had to calculate whether or not I could fit in one more Doomsday and still be able to, in tie-dye, be able to then evacuate my ship afterwards to go somewhere safe, because you can't move your ship for X period of time after firing a Doomsday weapon. And I managed to get out with less than 30 seconds left before downtime closed, and managed to get into a safe POS on another system. It was tricky. But it was slow and long and exciting and exhausting, and it had gravitas and significance. It was amazing, and was a feeling you can't get in another video game.
At least, what was your experience with it?
So I got in kind of halfway through. I wasn't there at the very start, but then so I had two Titans that I was trying to jump in at the same time to after the fight. Looked like it was pretty much lost, but I didn't want to be like that guy that was just like, "Oh, it's lost. I'm not gonna show up." So I started jumping in both of my Titans after after it seemed pretty clear that we were horribly outnumbered. I just like hang around, talk to people because there's in time dilation everything slows down. In time dilation with Titan Doomsdays, you're talking about almost an hour between Doomsday shots where you have to fill that time. You have to keep people engaged. So it was just a matter of like chatting with people, walking around, doing stuff around the house, coming back, seeing if we could fight Doomsdays again, and trying to decide what to do, what we're going to do afterwards, what games we want to play later, and stuff like that. And also like just constant pinging to get more and more people in, just to see if we get like a pound of flesh out of it of killing some more people. Because quickly early on, like the video doesn't do it quite justice, but we lost critical mass really fast in terms of Titans. Like there was some trading going on very early, but the way it works is, it's Doomsdays are just alpha, just pure alpha. And so if you have a certain amount, you can kill anything with those number of Doomsdays. If you drop below that critical mass, you can't do crap, because if you get a Titan to 99% health or to 1% health, he's just going to be repped up by the time you have another Doomsday volley to go through. And super carriers, which we had, and carriers and dreads in high time dilation and high lag, they aren't always effective. So you can't really rely on them to apply the DPS too much.
We were using super carriers to bring more fuel to the Titans because it takes a lot of fuel to fire your Doomsday. You definitely wanted to be completely full before jumping into a battle like that and just trying to chain Doomsday 1 per hour all the way to downtime. That's a lot of fuel.
Yeah, and it's a scale of a fight that we hadn't really seen before in terms of Titan. Like we've seen some pretty big capital slugfests but they've always usually been in dreadnoughts, right? And there's been a lot of fights that have been close to BTAC-R beforehand. In fact, the week beforehand, in a system called HeadGP, which a lot of people know, Pandemic Legion had a showdown against the exact same forces, except this time Pandemic Legion were kind of more prepared, and it wasn't a Sov drop thing. And Vili, who was the fleet commander of the Halloween War for the Goon side, and the Russians came in with all of their dreads saying, "Today is the day we make PL and N3 bleed or NC bleed. This is where we're gonna show it." And so they had this plan. It completely failed because when they jumped in, the game, like, it didn't load for them. Because they were jumping in like 700 dreads at the same time, and it just didn't work. And so it was a bit of a disaster. And it's so funny that in EVE Online, one of the biggest battles happens just because there was a mistake made. No one planned for it. There was nothing. There are no like plans on the table. This wasn't like written up anywhere. It was just one group escalating on a mistake that they saw. And the mistake that they saw was Pandemic Legion dropped sovereignty. And in fact, it was a holding corp that was actually Nulli Secunda at the time in Manfred Sidious's holding corp. So the sovereignty dropped, and Razor Alliance, of all groups, we were just talking about them earlier, they came in and started to shoot the station. Because back then, for those that aren't aware, in the Sov, before Age of Sov, once the TCU was dead, the station became 100% vulnerable. So you can flip the station through shields, armor, and then structure, and then it would flip to the new owner. So in this case, it would have been all of PL and N3 stuff would have been in a Razor or Goon-controlled station. And that would have been disastrous. So PL was like, oh, geez, well, we can just park all of our supers on here, and we'll just hold the station while our new TCU goes up, which is a 7-hour process. So Pandemic Legion, who was busy flipping stations in the north for another issue that happened, came back, took the station back from Razor, and put up their own TCU, and they were guarding it with super carriers, a small contingent of super carriers on the station grid itself, guarding this TCU. And then Lazarus Telraven, a storied FC for Goonswarm, was like, hey guys, this is a pretty good chance for us. Like, we can probably outmaneuver them here and out-escalate them. Let's drop everything we have right now. And he just gave the go-ahead for the Goons and the Russians to drop literally everything they had. Just drop the hammer, ping everything while they were dropping it to try and force NC Dot and PL to match the escalations. And as it happened, PL could not even get close to matching the escalation. And so it just kept spiraling and spiraling and snowballing in their favor.
Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting things that happens there in the escalation, the psychology of escalating or not escalating. What was going on before Head GP, before BTAC-R? This was basically the aftermath of the Fountain War that had ended in October. And you have what is known as the Halloween War, because after Fountain War ended, the Halloween War kind of started and went into the next year, where people were fighting not in Fountain, but over in Imensia area. And it was basically NC versus Russians. And then Goons came down to help Russians, and NC was actually N3 at the time. So it was Nelly Segunda, NC Dot, and more, and Pandemic Legion was involved with that as well. And if I'm not mistaken, it was all part of a SOV drop that Nully suffered at the hands of the people who are now Snuff. Those people were in Nully at the time. The corp was Elna, and they dropped all of SOV for the Renter Alliance that Nully had. And because it happened so suddenly, nobody was prepared to take it. So PL, NC, and N3 basically left the Fountain War to come and reclaim that. And they did it quickly. Like in 2 or 3 days, they got most of the stations, and then later they started reconquering the SOV. But that opened up a window for Russians to try to take some SOV, since it had all dropped. Why not? And that was the beginning of the Halloween War, the way that I remember it. But what was going on as far as, and does that sound right to you, Elise?
More or less. I think the SOV drop happened a little bit closer to BTAC-R. But yeah, I mean, when the Fountain War happened, PL wasn't really involved in it. It was kind of an N3 thing. PL were busy trying to win an alliance tournament, which is where the like kind of
That's
test
right.
meme came from. But you know, after the N3 and like the defense of Fountain didn't work, you know, PL were kind of busy trying to make their home in the north, or like their renter home in the north. And NC Dot and Co were kind of doing the same. And then so when the Nully SOV dropped, I think it was like the day before BTAC-R, or at least close to that.
No,
that was one of the SOV drops.
No, we're thinking of two different SOV drops.
Okay, yeah, because there are two SOV drops.
Yeah,
both done by Nully.
Yeah, the one that kind of ended, it didn't end, but it hindered. It was kind of like when two bears are fighting, and a wolf runs up and bites one of the bears in the legs, and then the fight kind of starts going the wrong way for that bear. That's kind of what it felt like. And that was when the Renter Alliance for Nully basically was disbanded, dropping all the SOV that they owned, which was most of it for N3 in that area. And NC basically took it over with Northern Associates. That's when the Northern Associates grew into what it eventually became the biggest alliance. It was mostly renters, but the biggest alliance. That happened right at the middle end of Fountain War. And Manny and Pro God, who was running Test at the time, even though he was in Nelly Segunda, he was flying for Test. And NC, I think it was Vince, basically came back and just pounded out Imensia and all those areas that had dropped their SOV. And they reclaimed it really quickly, like really within 2 or 3 days, which was amazing.
Yeah, it was a testament to grinding, because that was just a buttload of grinding to do.
Yeah. And, is that Lastel in the audience there? Because if it is, we should get him on. If you can jump on to Talking in Stations Discord, we'd like to talk to him. Yeah, bring him on. I don't normally do that, but I'll make an exception for him, and especially today on the 5-year anniversary of BTAC-R. But what I wanted to ask was, what I wanted to get to is, there's some more backdrop before BTAC-R and HeadGP actually happened. And I consider it two fights, right? BTAC-R was the biggest fight, but right next to it, for me, is HeadGP, which was a big, big fight too. There seemed to be a lot of tension in that area because, I don't know, I just remember speeches from leaders saying, we got goons in the area, we're in the area, something's going to happen, there was a few like testing skirmishes that seemed to happen. And so when HeadGP happened, it wasn't a shock, but it was definitely like, wow, this is big. This is as big as we've ever seen. And then a few days later, BTAC-R happens, and it's like, wow, this is really big. We've been waiting for this a long, long time. I consider it the time when it would be like the First World War, where societies had developed weapons and power beyond their imagination and said, we can't be stopped. Look at what we have. We have machine guns. And they went to war thinking that they were invulnerable and could just, plow over their enemies. And the enemy thought the same thing. And so it was a giant collision of power.
Yeah, and it's actually, I know Seth was saying that the fight itself was probably grueling and terrible, and he's glad he wasn't there. The fight itself was nothing to write home about. And in fact, most people that are there have negative memories of it because it wasn't too much fun. But the impact of the fight and that entire time period is actually pretty huge. It marked like a huge amount of popularity for EVE Online. It was like a flash in the pan for a little while, more than a flash in the pan, but it really brought groups like Brave Newbies to the forefront. Like a lot of newer players started joining EVE Online around that time. And EVE Online didn't have that many places for new players. They had EVE University, which has been around forever, Goon Swarm, which if you were in something awful, you just went to Goon Swarm. Test Alliance, because it was the Reddit Alliance, but they just finished the Fountain War and they were kind of in a rebuilding phase. And so a lot of these newer players went to groups like Brave Newbies, or they just kind of came into different newer player groups. And that kind of changed the course of the game from that point forward, where you have groups like Brave Newbies, Pandemic Horde, Karma Fleet, all having massive impacts in the game of EVE Online, which is, it's still in here today. And all of that is just a byproduct of the popularity from the BTAC-R fight.
Really, I can tell that there is a negative impact of that fight also, because a lot of people who have participated in this fight, they decided to drop the game because they thought to themselves that this fight is their game over and they reached everything because they just wasn't that fight. And lots of people left the game, maybe like Zoomzat, who is and who was in Russian FC for this fight. So it's a huge loss for Russian community for sure.
Yeah, the Russian community kind of never really they have now, but it took a long time for them to recover after BTAC-R, because you figure they just won the biggest battle at the time in EVE Online history. And then after that, they end up losing the war just because a lot of people just become disinterested, don't want to play anymore, just have other reasons for not wanting to get involved. And so like a month or two later, N3PL take all of the reclaimed space that they had. They just take it all back.
That's a very interesting point you make, Seth. And that ding is from Laz, which I guess announces that he has joined the channel. So Laz Telraven was the FC for the winning side of that fight, which would have been Goon Swarm, the CFC at the time, and Russian groups that were helping them. Laz, welcome.
Thanks, guys. I'm actually in the process of trying to set up my pushers talk. So
all right. Well, we can give you a second. Don't worry, because I want to explore. I want to explore this a bit more from Seth's point of view. That the BTAC-R signaled the end game for a lot of players, a lot of Russian players who were heavily involved in BTAC-R, and they left the game afterwards because they'd kind of achieved the big fight that they were kind of waiting for while they were making their career. So is that how powerful is that idea in the Russian community?
Strong enough to don't let a lot of people still play just a game, not something.
So people who think of EVE as just a game would play some more, but the people who thought of it as a career or a journey, they were done with their journey.
Yeah, it was a lot of people who were done with their journey in this fight.
That is so interesting. I've never heard that put that way, but it makes a lot of sense. And it was a victory for Goon Swarm or CFC and Russians. So it really could be like, yeah, this is a good time to leave because we won, right?
Oh, for sure, no. That's a bit different thing that you're talking about. I don't think someone were claiming victory after it.
No.
It was just victory for themselves, like they achieved everything and they quit the game.
Okay, so it's a personal decision.
Yeah, it's not about full community and coalitions, it's personal decisions of people.
Yeah. So joining us, we're super lucky to have Laz with us, who was a big part of that day. Laz, you want to give us some of your thoughts on BTAC-R? And this is the 5-year anniversary.
I mean, thoughts how? I mean, it's been a long time since then, and you see massive fights since then. Just none of them actually culminating to be as big as B-R. I mean, eventually, I think it'll happen. I think we're waiting on CCP to just kind of fix some of the node issues, and then we'll see that next monumental fight.
Yeah, they've been big in other ways. Obviously, the population that is fighting and the amount of damage that was done, I think, is not matched BTAC-R. That's still, the amount of damage done in a fight is still BTAC-R, I believe. But let me ask you a more specific question. What was that day like for you? When did it start? I'm really curious about the pivotal moment where you thought, let's take this fight. Because you had just had a huge loss in Head GP where the game had not functioned well, and you guys were decimated by the group. So a few days later, what gave you the courage to say, let's do this again?
Oh, we'd been looking for that fight ever since we moved our supers down. We knew we had an opportunity to take this fight. We knew at that point with the Russian supers and our supers that we had enough to actually engage in the all-out war there. Head GP, we actually didn't want to go in there. But the Russians really, really wanted to jump in with the dreads because we had so many dreads at that time. But since PL and NC had the field, we didn't want to actually jump into that. But we did it to show solidarity, and our Russian bros ended up being a crapshoot because just all the dreads just got massacred. But we learned stuff from that fight, and then going into B-R, we kind of learned from our mistakes and had a GP and knew that we had to be in early and get our main force in. And then that dreads didn't matter because nothing cycled. And that's the biggest key point of Head GP that we learned. But B-R that morning, I went to bed about 4 a.m., got about 2 hours of sleep, woke up to kill the TCUs with Razor and the Russians. And at that point, we anchored our own, and when things started escalating, I actually called in sick to work because I knew this was the day. I actually called and woke up Matani so he could start sending pings and getting everyone up and running. And then from there, I had Sword Dragon in my ear asking, "Hey, are we going to go, man? We're going to go." And I was like, "Yeah, we're going."
You made that call, right? Because I saw your presentation. I think it was at FanFest, and you were saying that CFC or Goon leadership wasn't, or Matani wasn't really thinking it was a good idea.
Oh yeah, he kind of wanted to back down a few times, and I told him, "No, it's fine. We got this. And then we pulled the trigger.
Yeah. So it was, but it took you to basically push CFC into it, right? Like you guys could have backed down, thinking it's a bad opportunity because look what happened to us a few days ago. But you decided, no, this was it. We're going to go.
Yeah, no, the only people that would be able to make that call would be myself or probably Billy at the time because V wasn't around in that time zone. He was still at work. But since I was around and able to actually make the call, is why we went in. But Matani doesn't make decisions like that. He leaves it up to the people that are actually running the campaign.
Right. So, man, I just got to tell you, like, how confident you got to feel to take that fight? Like you're risking a lot.
Yeah. Oh, well, like I said, we've been looking for that fight, and we were pretty confident that we could take it. We knew we had similar numbers, and we ended up having actually quite a few more Titans jump into the fight with the amount of Russian Titans that came in. Like the Russian Ragnarok fleets were a huge difference there. And one of the big things is we had so many different flavors of Doomsdays. I think most of our Titans are actually tanked for just EM Therm, just to tank the full Avatar Erebus fleet that the NCPL fleet was.
And after you guys like first started coming in, you guys also got like super dominant in the subcap forces too. So it just gave the supers even more swagger, right? Because you could be like, hey, even if shit does go sideways a little bit, we can just kill off all the bubbles and get out anyway. So let's just come on in.
Yeah, we actually didn't bring any subcaps there. We had the dominant. We had my Dominex fleet there, and I think we had a second Dominex fleet from some other one of the other groups, and we actually didn't bring in any more subcaps once the actual escalation happened, and the only subcaps that are allowed to come in were Hicks and Dix. So interdictors and Hicks only ones allowed to come in, and then all of our other subcaps are actually rerouted to camp the staging system for N3, so that they couldn't get more capitals into the fight, like their triage carriers and dreads, etc. So they're holding down that undock so they could get that support in.
And that's super savvy too, because sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Because in previous instances, like there have been times where a fight like this could have happened, like and most notably in MTACO, a few years prior. And the reason it didn't is because the node literally just crashed because everyone tried to dogpile in the system to get a piece of it, right? So the call to say, hey guys, don't come in. We're gonna reserve like what space we have for Titans and Dreads. So go do something else. It was incredibly savvy. It kept the node from crashing and allowed you to get even more kills.
Yeah, that was what I remember of the fight, is how well you guys locked up reinforcements. People were not able to get back into the fight if they were killed and knocked out.
Yeah, I think at one point Nully tried to do a mass like cap and dock into our subcapitals, and we actually had a reserve dread and carrier fleet that we dropped on their undock just to keep them at bay. So I mean, like, there was a lot of wheels working at that point. I was texting V constantly asking when he's going to get home, because at this point I'm trying to run four different fleets, and it's really nerve wracking. 2 hours of sleep.
Yeah, no kidding. 2 hours of sleep. So you're in there. The fight's going. You guys, I think you get off to an early start. Like, I don't know, what was the most surprising thing that you saw that day?
Surprising? The
TCU drop?
Yeah, there you go.
The first thing.
What instigated the fight? I mean, surprising though. Nothing really surprised, like, because we learned so much from Head GP with that, how the nodes actually react, that nothing was too big of a surprise. Mm-hmm. I think probably the biggest shock was how many Titans the Russians brought to the field to help bolster the fight. Like, because whenever we thought we were running out low on Doomsdays to hit the next target, Russians be like, "Hey, we get 10 more rags coming in." We're like, "All right."
Yikes! Who were those Russian groups that were helping out?
Oh dang! I don't remember. It was Seth would probably better answer.
Maybe it was Solar Fleet, some kind of stain Russians. I don't get how they were named because I wasn't playing at this time. But I think Solar Fleet was the main part of this battle from Russian side.
It was like a Darkness and Solar Fleet that were like pretty much the main ones.
Right. I remember Solar being in there, but I didn't know if there was a bunch of little groups or if it was two major groups or what it was.
This was the time where the Russians were actually starting to band together, because forever they've had all the different factions of Russians in the game, but this is one of the wars that it was actually a lot of the core Russians banded together to actually push this.
And remember the Russians were still kind of reeling after the AAA collapse, because AAA was pretty recently just had started to die there. So they had a huge axe to grind against NC and PL. So they really wanted to get back.
The biggest surprise for me was that Sort Dragon took a long time to destroy. I don't even know if they destroy. I think they finally did destroy him, but in the meantime, that was really what, for me, broke CFC out in front, because they might have taken 3 or 4 or 5 Titan losses in order to kill one Titan on the other side, which would have been Sort Dragon. And it makes sense now, because you guys were perfectly tanked for what you were up against. Some of you guys were.
Yeah. Sort was super bait tanked, right?
No, I think because basically once we jumped in, we had everyone swap to active tank, and then we also gave them the order to swap to EM Therm. I wasn't even running. We weren't even running ENAMs. We were running complete active hardeners for EM Therm, just to get as much resist as possible out of those. Even like stacking penalties be damned. And I think I actually dropped my explosive hardeners too after I saw that the fighter bombers weren't really doing much in the fight, so we didn't really have to worry about that explosive damage from them. So I think most of our Titans actually swapped to that configuration, except for our rags. Our rags are the ones that kind of just died in a fire, just from not enough shield.
Yeah. So how long did you last before you collapsed? You only had 2 hours of sleep.
I was there all the way up to about, I think, 11 or 12. And then I handed my fleet off. And I think actually Elo started managing the fight. Because basically once the Erebuses were dead is kind of whenever I dipped out, and that's when Elo.
It's an interesting experience to have guests calling doomsday targets. So what they would do is they'd tell you, okay, when your doomsday's ready, put a mark in this channel, and then we'll tell you who to shoot. So the guest is calling for you who to target and who to shoot, and coordinating the doomsdays.
Okay, so that's the big battle. We know about what happened during it. What was it like was there a moment, Laz, when you guys were like, we're winning this, we're going to win this?
I think at that point, that was when we were, I think, 6 or 7 Titans up before they get our first one down. Actually, I think it was 6 to be exact, before they actually were able to swap, because they burned all their doomsdays, and we were able to kill 6 before their cycle time, because I think it was an hour and a half per cycle of doomsday there. And then that's when we lost our first rag, and then shortly after that we lost 2 or 3 other rags. I mean, but at that point we were so far ahead on the doomsday clock that we knew we had a serious advantage.
The doomsday clock, that's awesome. At least on the other side of it, you were on the PL side. You said you knew pretty early on this is not going to go well?
I mean, by the time I logged in, which was, I think, 2 or 3 hours into it, maybe a little bit later, it seemed like it was pretty much over, right? Because we were, at the start, we were always behind the 8 ball. The main problem, because the fight started on the station grid, and all of our supers were bubbled in a large pause, and we could not get to the station grid without being dragged off. So we had to log in our supers, log in our Titans, make sure they didn't bounce, jump out of the pause to a beacon, make sure the beacon wasn't camped, then jump back in onto the station grid. So it's this huge involved process, which doesn't sound like it's too time consuming, but when the fight just started first happening, the first series of doomsdays, we lost because we were like trying to get our ships actually into the fight. And so we lost, I don't know, like 2 Titans right at the start, like just flat out lost them before we could even fire a shot. And from then, like, the hope is we'll stay on grid long enough to see, because we have no idea what the bad guys or what the other guys are going to bring. And maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to get enough people on our side to swing it back in our favor. And so that's when, in the very beginning, we were behind the 8 ball. Then we kind of like start to pull even a little bit. But then more of the Russians and goons kept coming in. And we kept bringing more people in ourselves too. Like that never stopped. But the rate at which we brought new people in wasn't as great as the rate that they were. So.
Oh, by the way, I think it was Darkness of Despair was in there, not necessarily Darkness, right?
Yeah, that's Swords Alliance.
No.
Oh.
Darkness of Despair is a Russian alliance.
It was Russian.
Yeah, Sort was in Darkness of Despair at the time.
Yeah, he was leading he was like their Australian fleet commander type thing because he had a similar time zone. But yeah, Darkness were the Russian Darkness of Despair were the Russian group, but Sort was leading. Right, he was there.
So what happened after the fight? Okay, so you guys have this giant fight. It resonates for a lot of people. For some people, it ends their career. It's because they finished and doing their personal goals. But what was the cleanup like? With the aftermath, what do you call it? The post-war scenario, just minutes or days after it happened.
Right after it happened, I mean, that nothing much happened besides we had complete super dominance, and so we had basically like in the Fountain War when you had the super carriers just completely flip the Sov after the Sov drop. That's essentially what happened in Mencia. We had super fleets running 24/7 just to flip the Sov as quick.
So
no, there was a big diplomatic thing. I don't know if you remember that, because if I go back to the beginning of the conversation, what we said was we didn't want to see when the territorial claim units inadvertently made the station vulnerable and Razor started shooting it. We didn't want the station to flip, because then all of these valuable assets that you have in that structure are now in a Razor structure. So tell us if that fear actually came through in the end.
You mean for the actual station itself, BR station? Because because Razor had the earliest claim on TCU, so that actually went off and claimed the system for Razor, and then I believe Razor transferred everything to Goons, which then they made a deal with Grath to trade it back to PL in exchange for PL's pulling itself out of the war.
Yeah, the idea was like, yo, we'll give you back your station, just leave. And so we're like, all right, we'll take that, and we're happy to leave. We wanted to leave anyways, so at least now this is incentive for us to leave, because at the same time, Pandemic Legion had an agreement with Goons to not take each other's space. It was called the Bot Lord Accords. We'd like agreed to it I think a month or even 2 months prior. So we didn't really care too much about the space so much. We were happy to just leave, pull back to an area where we knew we could defend, and just try to rebuild the lost supers that we had, the lost Titans rather.
Also, Alice, I have some question for you. How many Titans was sold by Goons to Pandemic Legion after this fight? Do you have any information about this? Yeah, because I have heard that a lot of Titans were sold by Goons to PL.
Only if they were able to get an alt into Goons to actually buy it, because there is a huge they tracked it super well. So if you recall selling Titans outside of the CFC at the time, then you were immediately blacklisted, and your builds or whatever, if they're called.
Yeah, back then selling Goons still had the thing of selling a Titan outside of the Alliance was constituting blue fucking. So they were like, no, can't do that. But what we ended up doing is all the people who were super inactive or not super active, they're like, yo, we'll give you, like, for an active person, we'll give you our Titan, and then while you guys are building a new one, we'll just get that in like 5 weeks when it comes out. So the day after, like 80% of the people that lost Titans had new Titans again. We just had a huge backlog trying to build things up, and I'm not sure exactly where all the minerals came from, but we ended up getting our Titans back pretty quickly.
Well, a lot of them were you recollected them from players that weren't active anymore, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if a guy hadn't played in 3 or 4 months or even more, we'd poke him on the forums. We'd be like, hey, we just lost a lot of Titans. Would you be okay if you gave your Titan away, and we'll either give you money for it, or we'll give you a new Titan in 5 weeks when it comes out of build? And basically everyone was like, yeah, sure. I'm not playing this month anyway, so good luck.
As for the minerals, though, this was back whenever the drone stuff gave you crap. Like all the drone NBCs gave tons of minerals, so I think that's where you guys were able to rebuild.
Yeah, I think Kenneth Feld was obviously went into overdrive. He's somewhat of a tycoon builder for PL, and I think he put a lot of stuff back in the hands of active players.
Yeah, he was one of our. That's when he became like the industrial leader of PL as well. Around that time, we don't call him an industrial leader. It's like the logistics leader for PL. That was around that same time. So he had a huge hand in making that happen, which is not an insurmountable task by any stretch. But yeah, the diplomatic deal that Laz was mentioning is like give us a station and we leave happily. Like that was the best. That was like the cherry on top, and we were like so happy to do that. We're like, yeah, we did not want to be here anyways, because PL is very much, at least at that time, PL was very much a feast or famine type of alliance, right? So if you have a lot of good fights going on, PL members will snowball and just destroy you, right? But if you have a string of some pretty unlucky or some pretty bad results, a lot of people didn't want to show up. That's changed quite a bit since then. But back then, we had just suffered like a huge loss. Not only was it a huge loss, but it was like terrible to go through, right? So we hated it. So we're like, no more of this, please. And even the fights that we won, like we weren't really happy with them a lot of the times, because the wrecking ball formation that you saw in the video was just so grueling to go through, right? So it's essentially, for those that aren't aware, it's essentially just sitting all of your capitals in a ball and just holding one little sphere, one area of the grid. And the grid only went to a few hundred kilometers. They're not like super grids that they all are now. So basically, you would either sit in an iHub grid, or sit at a TCU grid, or sit at a SBU grid. You'd be on one of those three grids, and you would just hold it, and you'd win that objective, but you wouldn't be able to do anything else in the system.
This was also the period where we were actually our main strategy to fight the wrecking ball up until head GP and BR was waterboarding. We weren't actually trying to kill it. We would just throw dictors at it constantly just to keep them in place and able to extract.
Yeah, that must have been grueling. If the only tactic of the people you were fighting is to grab you and hold you and make you play hours and hours and hours, that's got to wear on you after a while.
Actually, remembering the breaking wall formation, I can remember that some Russian players were whining a lot on forums about it. They tried to use long-range dreads to just alpha carriers, and it didn't go well in head GP, like I can remember, and it was a lot of cheers about it. I think it was too much lag to just load the system for these dreadnoughts, and they die in fire from super carriers and carriers with this wrecking ball formation. So
that's what we told our Russian counterparts before jumping into head GP, and we told them it was a bad idea and that we shouldn't do it. We should just wait. And but they really wanted to go in, because they their biggest claim was, if we don't jump in and we blue ball all these people, because I think we had something like 1,000 dreads. Like, we had a crazy amount of dreads for this time period, and they're like, if we don't go in, morale's going to crash and we're going to lose people. We have to go in, even if we feed. And we're like, all right, let's go in. So that's what happened.
That was for head GP?
That was head GP.
Yeah. So anyway, the BTAC-R again represents a milestone in EVE Online from various angles. Really, it's very interesting. And that was 5 years ago today. It was a 20-hour fight, and as you know, it really was a watermark for what mass scale combat is in EVE Online. So thank you guys very much. Laz, Lead FC for the winning side there, CFC, and the Russian groups that were there, probably Solar and Darkness of Despair, and Carneros and Elise. Elise, were you the leader of PL at the time?
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah, I remember, but I do remember the apology to NC came from Grath, who was saying, "I love you guys, but we got to go."
Yeah, that was pretty much it. He saw the opportunity to get all the things, and Shudu did as well. Like, V and Shudu were talking because they're very close friends, and they're kind of like they're like adversaries, but not really adversaries. They're like
friend-adversaries.
Yeah, they're friend-adversaries. So they were basically cut from the same cloth and then like the same huge names. And Shu had taken a bit of a step back. He logged into BTAC and Addictor, messaged me, was like, "This is terrible. I can't get my Titan out of system. I'm just gonna leave it online," because his Titan character had it was still well known. It's one of the oldest Leviathans in the game. But he was like, "Don't tell anyone that I'm doing other stuff because I'll feel bad."
Don't lower morale.
We had people going to the store like, "Hey, we're back and run the shop real quick," and so be gone for like 30 minutes and come back.
Yeah, you could be gone for an hour and still fire your Doomsdays on time. That's how.
That's what allowed me to play EU time zone at work. Is I could actually sit there at work, do the thing, and then I could work for an hour and then come back and then do the thing again, and that was good. So I kind of like tie-dye. It let me fight a lot more in the past. But then my boss got this tracking tool where you could see how much EVE I was playing every day. So that was the end of that.
That's horrible.
Well, yeah. I also looked at it now. He's like, check this out. I can see all the times you're playing EVE. And I'm like, damn it, I'm the only guy in this building playing EVE? I thought there were more guys. No, it's fine. It was a jest, but at that point I was like, yeah, I can't stay online all day long. It just starts to look bad after a while. Yeah, that was, shoot, I had another question. I'm losing my questions today. This is what happens when I don't sleep enough. But I want to thank Laz and Elise for talking to us about BTAC-R. A lot's happened since then. I think the game has totally changed since BTAC-R. It was a real milestone.
The solve system has changed, capitals have changed, jump mechanics have changed, structures have changed.
Yeah, it's a different game. Super capitals at this point, BTAC-R, were not what they are today. They were a whole different species than they are today. Capitals in general were a different species. Now, super capitals look a lot more like big sub-capitals. They're kind of used in the same way. Laz, what are you doing these days?
Right now, I actually just wiped my computer. I'm trying to do a little more physical stuff. So I've been going to the gym 5-6 times a week, and I've been playing literally no computer games for the past month. So I was just kind of I've been staying on Discord and Twitter and Reddit and stuff like that. And I saw the Talking Stations post, so I figured I'd jump.
Man, how lucky are we that you saw that? Who are you flying with these days? Are you still with AMOC?
No.
That was a while ago, right?
Wow.
That was a while ago. Okay. Where are you now?
I'm in Black Legion right now. But it's still a little bit of a sore subject. I'm still sad about losing my 10-year in the same corp streak.
Oh no, did they actually? I didn't get the story on this.
I got purged for not having my ESIs updated on my GDOM.
Is that an accident or?
No, there's this director in AMOC who I guess doesn't like me or something, but basically.
So what are your feelings towards Imperium now, or?
I don't have any grudges or anything. I get I play with Black Legion whenever I feel like actually playing EVE. I actually resubbed about 2 weeks ago, and then I haven't actually played after resub. So, but it's I don't know, EVE. I still love EVE, and I wish we could kind of get back to the way EVE used to be. I kind of don't like the way that the current soft system works, and I think if they're maybe come up with something new, more interesting, I'd probably start playing more again.
Hmm. Wow. Okay. So you're with Black Legion, and you do have it installed. So that's new. You said you just wiped your machine. Is EVE on it still, or?
Yeah. No, I wiped my machine, and the only thing that's on it right now is Rainbow Six and EVE.
Oh, cool. Hey, you used to be a great streamer too. Are you still thinking of doing that?
I've streamed for about 8 months. So, but I really enjoyed it, but it takes so much time commitment.
Yeah. Well, you were good at it, and you were good at FCing big fights too. Clearly, so it's good to have you around, even if you're not playing actively constantly.
Yeah, not constantly active, but I'm always watching.
All right, cool. Okay, well, again, Carneros, Elise, Laz, thank you guys for reviewing B-TAC-R. Seth, thanks for throwing in some interesting stuff from the Russian perspective. I want to say thanks also to Orion and Ron for telling us what's been going on recently. And our special guest there, Seth Shadow, thanks for coming on. We want to really keep an eye on Scourge, and we'd love to have you back sometime soon.
Yeah, feel free to invite me for some more shows. I will gladly visit them more. Thank you for inviting.
That's awesome. It's our pleasure, and we're definitely going to have you back. But okay, that wraps it up for this week, and we will see you next week on Talking in Stations.